Hi, welcome to my video on further explanation on even, partial, conic functions, number 1. So notice it's a partial conic, and I'll explain that as the video goes. F of x equals the square root of 4 minus x squared. And I have a grid here to graph it on. Is the f of x even or an odd function? Well, if it's let's look at the f of negative x. So we're subbing negative x into place of x. Negative x here and here. That makes it the square root of 4. Negative x squared is the same as x squared. So square root of 4 minus x squared is the same as this. So that means that the f of negative x is equal to the f of x. That means we have an even function, and an even function is reflected in the y-axis. And I'll show you that after we draw the graph. Now, let's look at the graph of this function. Let's make the f of x a y. And when we look at y equals the root of 4 minus x squared, we have a square root, so underneath the root we have to go 4 minus x squared has to be greater than or equal to 0, because you can only do the square root of a positive number, or 0. So let's solve this. X squared plus 4 is greater than or equal to 0. Let's multiply through by negative 1, x squared minus 4x. Negative 1 times 0 is 0. But because we multiply by negative 1 or divide by negative 1, it changes the direction of the inequality. That means that we can try to factor this. This is factorable. X is the difference of 2 squares, so it's x and x. Square root of 4 is 2 and 2. Because the product is negative 4 and the sum, there's no x in the middle here, so it's 0, so it has to be plus 2 minus 2. That means that we're looking at the values of x. Let's draw a number line. And we're looking at, because it's less than 0, we're looking at the x values which are going to be negative. So, right here, we have x plus 2, x minus 2, so that means we have a negative 2 and a 2. Those are the values of x that will give you 0. Let's put a number in the middle of that, put a number to the right of 2, and a number to the left of 2. So let's sub those values in and see what they give us, plus or minuses. So if we put a 3 in here, 3 here will give me a plus, and a 3 here will give me a plus 1. So that's a plus times a plus, which is a positive. Now we know that negative 2 and 2 will give me a 0. So if I put 2 in here, I'll get 4 minus 4 is 0. If I put a negative 2 here, negative 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. Let's put a 0 in here or here. Let's put a 0 in here. Put a 0 here, I get a plus 2, so that's a plus. If I put a 0 here, I get a minus. So a positive times a negative is a negative. And that's true for any number between negative 2 and 2. We'll get a negative. Now let's go on the other side, put a negative 3 in. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1, so it's a negative. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5, which is negative. Negative times a negative is a positive. So we have to pick where it's less than or equal to 0. So the interval is negative 2 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 2. So we know that we have we have the intervals of negative 2 is equal to, 2 is equal to, and we have all the values in between here. But what's happening to the graph? Well, let's look at the y-intercept of the graph. The y-intercept is when we have x equals 0. So take this equation, y equals square root of 4, and x is 0. 0 squared is 0, so that's the square root of 4. So that's a 2. So when x is 0, y is 2. So the y-intercept is at 2, 0, 2, which is right here. Now, let's look at the x-intercept. We already know what the x-intercepts are because we make the y equal to 0. But I'll just do that anyway. The x-intercept is when you let y equal 0. So you take this equation and let y equal 0. So 0 equals the square root of 4 minus x squared. Square both sides. 0 squared is 0. And the root of 4 minus x squared all squared is 4 minus x squared. So that means that x squared is equal to 4. Move the x squared to the left. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4. X is equal to plus or minus 2. And that's the same as, so x is 2, y is 0. X is negative 2, y is 0. That's the same answers we have here. But what about, so we're here and here and here, but what about in between? So if we take values of x in between, so let's take a 1 or negative 1. Let's take a negative 1. Take a negative 1 and we're going to take a 1. So we take negative 1 and put it right here. Negative 1 squared is 1. 4 minus 1 is 3. So I get the square root of 3, which is approximately 1.7. Put a 1 in. 1 squared is 1. 3 minus 1 is 3. I get the root 3 again, which is 1.7. So negative 1 gives me root 3, which is roughly 1.7. So let's say about there. And 1 gives me, say, 1.7, roughly. Again, we're getting a shape on the graph, and it looks like it's here, moving here, and so it looks like it's doing this. But how do we know for sure? Well, one way that I know for sure is that I take this equation. Here's what I do. I go y equals square root of 4 minus x squared. And I work, where did this come from? It came from both sides. So if I square both sides, I get y squared equals 4 minus x squared. If I move the x over, I get x squared plus y squared equals 4. So by squaring each side, I can see that this equation comes from, and look at it, this is the equation of a circle. So this is a circle. So the circle, which has a center of 0, 0, and r squared is 4. So r is plus minus 2. So r is 2. So what we have is that we have a circle which has a center 0, 0 with a radius of 2. So it's, let's draw like this. So there's 2, negative 2, 2, negative 2. But what we have here, y equals, this is positive. So that means all the y values are positive. So the x values go from negative 2 to 2. The y-intercept is 2. And the y values are positive. So what we have is really, we have this part. We have the upper part of a circle where y is positive, which is this right here. So this is, if you can take that as to be a circle. So there. And again, if I gave you the equation of the circle and you solve it for y, you would get a plus minus. So the other part of this circle would be y equals the negative of 4 minus x squared. So that negative would be the lower part, the negative would be this lower part right here, this part right here. The positive part, which is what we have here, is this upper part. So the upper part is y equals square root of 4 minus x squared. That's the upper. And this one is the lower part of this circle. So a little trick of taking this equation and squaring it tells you where it came from. And we're going to use that in the next video also as a little trick. So what we have, it's an even function. Notice that it's reflected. Notice that this point here is 2, 0. So this is negative 2, 0. And this point right here is x is 1, and that's at root 3. And this is x is negative 1 and root 3. So the x is changing, negative to a positive, but the y values are not changing. So it's reflected in the y-axis. So again, the y value is 0 and 0, but the x is going from a positive to a negative. Or you go this way, if you reflect it, it's changing from a negative to a positive. So that's reflected in the y-axis. Reflected in the y-axis, remember, means x comma y, excuse me, means negative x comma y. Or you could say it this way. F of negative x equals the f of x. It's reflected in the y-axis. It's an even function, obeying the notation that we learned way back in grade 9. So that brings us to the end of this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, click the like button, click the subscribe button, visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained, just one word. Thank you for viewing my video. Hope the video helped you. Bye-bye.